Hundreds more foreign passport holders have left Gaza through the Rafah crossing into Egypt. Now, crowds have gathered at the border, but only those on an official list are being allowed to pass. The biggest group of around 400 were US citizens. The crossing's been opened for the first time since the start of this current conflict between Israel and Hamas.
These were some of the first foreign passport holders to reach the safety of Egyptian soil. On the other side, hundreds were hoping for their chance to cross, but only those on a list agreed by Israel and Egypt would be allowed to do so. After more than 3 weeks under Israeli bombardment and blockade, people here were desperate to escape.
We are relying on God and hoping we'll get out. It's still our country and we feel sad for it, for its destruction, for our friends and loved ones. Entire families were destroyed and erased, all martyred. And if it weren't for what happened, we wouldn't leave.
As well as those allowed to leave for good, Egyptian authorities have agreed to a small number of medical evacuations, with ambulances crossing the border to retrieve the severely injured. Once in Egypt, they were taken to nearby hospitals for treatment. Gaza's own medical facilities are desperately short of even basic supplies and are overflowing with the injured. And while more aid trucks were allowed through once again on Wednesday, aid groups say it's only a tiny fraction of what entered daily before the Hamas terrorist attacks. The head of the UN's relief agency in Gaza stressed that residents were in urgent need after he crossed into Rafah for a visit.
And I was shocked by the fact that everyone there was asking for food, was asking for water. I saw almost every children trying to express their way that they need to eat, they need to have water. I never ever have seen something similar in Gaza when I came before, after conflict.
Egyptian officials say more people will be able to leave over the coming days, but it's unclear just how long the border will remain open to foreign passport holders. What is certain is that unless Egypt's government lets Palestinians cross too, for the vast majority of those trapped in Gaza, escape will remain impossible.
Well, Hajram Balusha is a journalist based in Gaza, and we asked him whether the small amounts of aid being allowed in are making any difference.
Well, in some places, some areas, UNRWA schools, like that people, displaced people are taking as a shelter. They're receiving more aid. Some organizations are distributing. But making huge or a concrete difference, it's not. I mean, still, we are talking about a huge number of displaced people, whether from the north or Gaza City, or even those people who are in this area from the border areas or other places, poor people, they are still struggling of getting the aid. The distribution mechanism is not clear to everybody. When I'm asking coordinator people about that, they don't know. Sometimes they get some aid from here and there, but it's not easy because there is no cooking gas, so people are not cooking in their homes, no water for washing or even for a drink.
That's Hajram Balusha in Gaza. Well, our correspondent Rebecca Ritters is in the Israeli city of Sderot, near the border with Gaza, and she gave us an update on Israel's military offensive.
Well, Phil, we know that the ground offensive continues and is growing. That the Israeli military is saying a little earlier that they've used this figurative term that they've reached the gates of Gaza City. Now that is obviously one of their key points, one of the places of focus. It's one of the biggest residential areas, or the biggest residential area inside the Strip. Of course, we know that the military have advised everybody living in Gaza City and further north to head south to expect these bombardments. Last night saw some pretty heavy bombardments as well, and where we're standing is about 2 kilometres from the northeast part. Behind me is a city called Beit Hanun. You can hear the pounding of artillery, is outgoing artillery, and you can hear even still some machine gun fire, heavy machine gun fire in the background from time to time. But the bombardments from here, we've been here for a couple of weeks on and off, and the bombardments in this area have been a lot more intense in recent days. Today, we're seeing a little less of that as the troops move further south towards Gaza City, where we expect them to be encircling the city so that they can continue the bombardments and trying to carry out their military aims of completely destroying Hamas's military capabilities.
All right, thanks for that. The President of Israel, Isaac Herzog, has given a national address urging unity amongst his countrymen. We'll listen to a clip of that, Rebecca, then we'll come back to you.
The enemy seeks to kindle hatred between us, between Jewish citizens and Arab citizens. We have to fight back against this without compromise and single-mindedly. We have to reject every urge toward hatred and racism, toward different groups among us. To recall the dozens of Arab citizens who paid with their lives, those at home and those in battle. And the most important is to recall the responsibility and the mutual respect that exemplifies the Arab community in Israel.
Back to Rebecca Ritters in the south of Israel. Rebecca, how is society there dealing with all this tension?
Well, that's a very important and timely message that you're hearing from the President there. Just exactly what ears it will fall on remains to be seen. The tensions here are incredibly high, both in Israel and especially in the West Bank. So we're seeing an increase in violence there. In particular, Arab Israelis in Israel also saying that they're feeling pressure, that they're feeling squeezed, that they're not being able to express themselves in the way they might like. They're being, even there have been cases of people being arrested for expressing their feelings about the war in Gaza. But on the West Bank, we're seeing a lot more violence. 2023, already before the war, was on track to be the deadliest year on record for Palestinians in the West Bank since records began. And, you know, we have seen that spike a lot since October 7. The UN saying that more than 130 Palestinians have been killed in that time since the attack on October 7th. And we've seen, you know, renewed and continued raids. Today, in particular, we've seen a lot of settler violence, and that has also been on the rise, with many settlers rampaging in the settlers, that being Israeli citizens who live in the West Bank, rampaging through the West Bank and even killing Palestinians. So today we saw settlers lighting fire to property and rampaging through areas around the Nablus area. And this morning we heard that 4 Palestinians were shot in various places across the West Bank. So, you know, really it's very, very tense. They've bolstered troops, Israeli troops throughout the West Bank, and they're trying, they say, to obviously root out militants, Hamas militants. They've made over 1,200 arrests, but it's creating a lot of tension, and the lives for Palestinians in those areas is becoming increasingly difficult.
Thanks for that, Rebecca. Rebecca Ritters in southern Israel.